there's these cuts in the mangrove that look really interesting to me.
We absolutely love getting off the beaten path, exploring remote islands, and living off the sea. It's our favorite aspect of the sailing lifestyle. But in order to do this, we need to have an extremely reliable outboard engine. If it breaks down in the middle of nowhere, not only does it mean not having fun, but we could also be stranded miles from the boat. Keeping our outboard well maintained is an essential part of sailing the world.
Previously on Project Atticus.
After spending 3 years refitting our fixer-upper sailboat, we left the United States with only $2,000 and the goal of working while we cruised. We made it as far as Isla Mujeres, Mexico, before we ran out of money and had to find work. For the next year, we did freelance boat repair jobs until we saved up enough cash to cast the lines and sail south to explore the Western Caribbean.
Recently, we made it to Bocas del Toro, Panama, where we will be tackling some boat projects to prepare Atticus for our biggest challenge yet, crossing the Pacific Ocean. Before we can really get into a lot of our big projects that we need to do for the Pacific crossing, we're going to need to get our workhorse up and running. And by that, I mean we're gonna have to get our Tohatsu outboard ready to rock and roll. Basically, we started having issues with the outboard about 2 months ago. What would happen is the outboard would push little shit at really low RPMs, but once I started to give it some throttle, it wouldn't push it any harder. So it would just kind of go along slowly, and I couldn't increase the thrust by increasing the throttle. I started looking up what the problem could be, and it sounds like the bushing inside this propeller has gone loose and isn't working anymore. So I'm going to replace that propeller. It has taken me a long time to figure out what greases or lubes to use in what situations, and I'm still not sure if I'm doing it just right. A big part of the problem is that often the service manuals for these motors and outboards will suggest using proprietary products, which are expensive and hard to get, so learning what generic greases and lubes to use can be tricky. Okay, so got the new prop on, but I do have a problem that I hadn't anticipated. As you can see, I switched from a 3-blade prop to a 4-blade prop. And I made that decision because a 4-blade prop, it's gonna have more power on the lower end. And because we always have Atticus so overloaded between Desiree, myself, and like a lot of the gear that we bring, a lot of the times once we really fill up little shit, we can't actually get on a plane because the boat just doesn't have enough thrust. And so I figured with a 4-blade prop, we might actually be able to get up onto a plane with a little bit more stuff in the boat than we currently can. The problem is now that this 4-blade prop contacts the cabin top before the lower unit can rest into the chocks that I've built and installed up here. So sadly, I think what I might have to do is order another 3-blade prop. You know, what are you gonna do? You live and you learn. So while I'm working on the outboard, I want to just do general maintenance to it. It's been about 6 months since we've done our normal maintenance routine, so I'm going to do that, starting with replacing this outer zinc anode / trim tab because it's just about done. Okay, now it's time to take the outboard to a spot where I can kind of do maintenance on the inside of the outboard. Cool, so I got this awesome spot in the marina. They've got a couple different outboards here and I got a nice view, which is cool. First thing I'm gonna do is check a couple of the areas of the raw water system. So I'm gonna check the thermostat and then I'm gonna go a little bit deeper and get to the zinc anode. Okay, well here's a thermostat and it's definitely got a little bit of buildup. I might soak it in some vinegar, and that'll really clean it up real nice. Well, the zinc was in better shape than I thought it was going to be. The service manual that I have for the Outboard suggests that you should replace the zinc if there's only 2/3 of the zinc left, or if 1/3 of it has dissolved. So this is definitely 1/3 gone for sure. And while I'm on the subject, having a service manual for the Outboard is so clutch. It's so helpful because I just don't know that much about outboards. I need the help. The next thing that I'm going to do is replace the little hose clamps that hold the fuel hoses in place. On top of that, I'm also going to replace the little inline fuel filter water separator. All right, good morning. So it rained a lot this morning, but luckily it's starting to clear a little bit. Bummer about having it rain all morning is that there are tons of bugs out, but I'm all covered up, so hopefully I'll be all right. So today I'm gonna start something that I'm pretty intimidated about with the Outboard. I'm going to have to remove the power head, which is basically most of what you see here, because I need to get to the oil strainer. So basically this Outboard is a 4-stroke, so it has like a oil reservoir on the bottom, and it circulates oil throughout the engine, and it doesn't have an oil filter, like a removable oil filter like you would see on a diesel engine. What it has is it just has an oil strainer right there where the oil gets sucked up from the reservoir into the engine. And I've never inspected it, and we've owned this thing for, I mean, probably coming on 4 or 5 years now, so it's definitely time to check it out. But it's a bummer because I have to remove most of the engine off of the Outboard to be able to access it. So never done it before, I'm a little nervous. The other thing I'm going to do first is drain the oil so that I don't get too messy. So I am by no means a good mechanic, but one of the things I have learned the hard way is to never try to force a stuck bolt loose, but rather to use penetrating oil like PB Blaster and just be patient. Give the oil some time to work its way into the threads. That method worked great here with this oil drain plug. It was stuck, not coming undone. A little bit of that penetrating oil, a little bit of time, and I was able to get it loose without damaging the threads. Here again, you can see I was having a hard time removing the throttle cables, but a little bit of PB Blaster made this a much easier process. Now, as I said before, I really am not much of a mechanic, but the Tohatsu service manual literally walks you through everything step by step with clear pictures and instructions on how to do it. Basically, it helps to make me look like I actually know what I'm doing. Okay, well, we got it off, and it really wasn't as hard as I was thinking it might be. So this is the oil strainer, and it's super, super clean. So I don't know if I'm gonna do this inspection again, at least for a long, long time, because we've had this for probably 5 years, and this thing is, I mean, just super clean. So this wasn't really all that necessary to do. Another lesson that I had to learn the hard way was to have every single gasket for every single motor, engine, and pump on the boat. Not having the right gasket when you've got to do maintenance or an emergency repair can really ruin your day. Plus, they're lightweight, small, and easy to stow. Another lesson that I've learned is to really take the time to clean bolts and fasteners before reassembling motors and engines. A clean bolt with clean threads and a good anti-seizing lubricant that's also heat resistant can make the difference of your next round of maintenance being quick and easy or a nightmarish experience. Okay, well, got the power unit back on, and while I'm at it, I figure I might as well take off the lower unit to check the impeller. You know, I'm really hesitant to do it because I just went through all that work taking the power unit off, and I really didn't need to. And there's a good chance that that'll be the case for this impeller, but I'm here and I might as well just do it and know for certain that we don't have a problem. Also, I do know for a fact that when I was flushing it the other day, it did run for a little while without any raw water getting through, just because the way I was flushing it failed for maybe a minute. And so it did start to smoke. So there's a chance that that impeller is burnt up. That's what I figured, yeah. All right, so here's the impeller. And it's not terrible, like the rubber definitely hasn't melted or anything, but you can see that it's definitely deformed quite a bit. I am going to replace it. I've got a new one right here, and you can see the difference is, pretty dramatic. So I will hold on to this as a spare until we get another spare. Having the service manual is awesome, but it doesn't cover every single contingency. And here you can see I ran into a problem that's not all that uncommon, and that is that the old gasket had fused with the surface below it. So I had to really carefully use a blade to scrape all of the old gasket off without damaging the surface below. And this is just a perfect example of one of the many things that go wrong when doing maintenance on motors and engines that isn't covered in the manual. Okay, the lower unit's back on, and now it is time to drain the gear oil. So basically you got two screws, one down here and one up here, and you need to fill it so that it goes from the bottom all the way up to the top screw. Oh God, I hate doing this.
I'm gonna squeeze it more. Oh, it's coming out. Okay,
ready? Go. Okay, gear oil is changed. So now I'm gonna open this bad boy up one more time, and we already drained the engine oil, so now I'm just gonna put in some more. Okay, so the last thing that we gotta do is put the thermostat back in, and it is a lot cleaner. So this is something that I don't know if that growth and buildup will affect the thermostat over time, but I've done this before, and soaking it in vinegar overnight just gets this thing super, super clean. Okay, so Outboard is in the water. Now I'm on to the final project before our workhorse is up and running again, and that is that we're replacing our old fuel hose that ran from the tank to the outboard. So I've got the new hose here, but I've got to do a couple of things to it. All fuel tanks that are made now in the United States, because of EPA regulations, they have to make sure that this pressure valve, it won't actually release any pressure unless there is a tremendous amount of pressure. It's almost like a safety valve. Back in the day, the valve would literally let any pressure out of the tank so that the pressure inside and outside the tank were identical. Generally, on a hot day, your tank is going to have a lot more pressure that can force gas into your carburetor and then even into the chamber to flood the engine. And we've had that problem a couple times in the past. So there's a pretty easy fix to this problem, and that is to install one of these demand valves. So all this does is it doesn't allow fuel to push through it. The fuel has to be pulled out. So you have to have a demand or some kind of a suction, and then all of a sudden this valve will pop open, and then you can have fuel flowing through no problem.
All right, well, now that we got little shit up and running, we're gonna take her out for a little spin. We actually ran into Captain Rick Moore of SSL, and we're gonna go hang out with them at Red Frog Beach.
Well, we can't get on a plane. I think this new prop is being an issue. It's got more power on the lower end, but we can't really get up going fast.
All right, so what's going on, bud?
We've got Captain Rick Moore here to the rescue, which we appreciate, and Madalena.
Hi,
correct?
guys.
We just gave little shit a test with the new propeller and everything, and she's running fine, but the new prop won't let the two of us get up on a plane. So Rick's gonna give us a ride there.
On big shit?
On big
On
shit.
big
That's
shit.
right. That's a good name, man.
Nice. I guess boat projects don't always go the way we planned.
That's right. Yeah, I'm gonna need a beer after
Really?
this one.
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah, we got some dolphins on the bow. Woo-hoo!
Okay, we're just about there. So where are we again, Rick?
Red Frog Beach.
Red Frog Beach. When we first bought Atticus, I wasn't handy at all. I knew nothing about fixing boats, and I made a ton of mistakes. But I always assumed that one day I would learn enough that making mistakes would be a thing of the past. I'm starting to understand that that day is just never going to come. Working on boats is generally 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and that's just how it is. The important thing is to remember that there is always something to smile about.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed getting down and dirty with us while we're working on our outboard engine this week. We just wanted to thank some of our brand new deckhand level patrons. So we've got Dream Pat, Richard McCabe, Mike Mizjeski, Seven Neufner, and W.M. Neal. We've also got Marty Friedman and Seren Marslet, Joseph Wilson, and Ken Bunch.
We've also got Chad Grimes and Mickey Finn, Trevor Evans and Manny
I
Montez.
think it's Montes.
You want me to say Montes?
Montes.
Sailing SV Journey and William Rogers, Joel Bonnet and Wesley Van Cott, and finally we have Nick Bush and Nick Lintgen. So thank you so much for your support, guys. Without you, none of this would be possible. And other than that, we will catch you guys next Thursday.